Oh, bump, bump. Yeah, here. Yeah, nice to see you. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Back after a day off. We took a long weekend, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, which we took Monday off. And the reason why we did it is, and I'm going to be honest with you, we're already moving to the 4-day work week. And a lot of talk about it in the news. A lot of people out there punditry about the 4-day work week. Should we? Shouldn't we? Is it beneficial? Is it not? No. So I'm moving to a 4-day work week. We're all moving here to a 4-day work week. Might be a Monday. We'll chisel off. Maybe we'll shave off a Friday here or there. But just so you know, we're moving to a 4-day work week in total. Just so you know.
No, we won't.
You're right.
Because you'll get excited and you'll go, we're doing a show. We're doing it. And then you'll call me and go, you ready?
I know.
Get your support local Glory Holes t-shirt on. Let's go.
That is Lachlan Cross, 957 Cruise FM in Edmonton. He's the morning show host. You can listen to him every weekday morning, 957cruisefm.ca, at Lachlan Cross on Twitter. And my name is Dean, and it's all misspelled there. But who really gives a shit? I don't give a shit. I got a semicolon in my name for some reason, which is weird. Speaking of colonoscopy next week, I got my first one.
So do you?
Yeah.
I haven't done that yet.
Yeah. 52. You're supposed to do it at 50. I turned 50 in like February, so I'm like, I should get a colonoscopy.
I said to my doctor,
yeah.
I said, do I need to get the old camera up the old hoop? And I don't know if it was COVID or something. He said, no, you're not the one I'm worried. I'm not worried about you at all. So But we were talking about.
Is that seriously what he said?
Yeah.
He said, I'm not worried about you. So you go in there and you're like, into your doctor's appointment, you're like, should I be having a colonoscopy anytime soon? I'm over the age of 50. And he's like, don't worry about it. It's not comforting to hear from your doctor.
My wife is bothered by this mark on my face, so I got to go back to the doctor. So maybe when I go back to get this mole, this growth on my face looked at, I will
ask her to check your hoop.
I'll have the colonoscopy conversation, see if I'm ready for it. We had an interesting conversation this morning. How much do you think your poo weighs?
Well, when? Like after a night of heavy eating or after a whole bunch of Metamucil and some trail mix? Like when?
Yeah, like a normal day. Like on average, what does your poo like?
Well, that's a great question. I have weighed myself after a bowel movement. Almost a pound. So I would say just under a pound, generally speaking, depending on your diet, how you eat, because it's very subjective, right? Like I'm a big fan of the anus. So this the anus thrives on neglect. You got to pay attention to the anus. We heard that last week from the butt doctor from New Zealand, remember?
Because
so it really depends.
This woman got arrested on the weekend delivering 50 pounds of human feces to the police station. And I'm speculating that she collected it on her own, and that it took. We did the math. We did poo math.
Like, how many poops?
One poo. If you're a bigger guy, you can get a pound out, eh? And if you're just a normal person, it's usually a quarter pound. So 50 pounds, and you're pooing 4 times. Like that's 200 poos. And I think she pooed in a bucket. Like she took it down in 5-gallon pails. I think she was pooing in a bucket and then delivered that. And I think she did it on her own. That's 200 days. And I was trying to convince the guys that she needed to get some credit for the commitment to the process.
But she does. And that's premeditated if I've ever heard premeditated.
Yeah.
You're collecting your turds like 200 turds at a time, right? Like 200 visits to the bathroom at a time.
She may have had a couple that were closer to a pound, so we'll cut that down to like 175. That's still 175 days of pooing.
Well, not days, because she might have had like a big day on a Thursday, right? Where it was a 2-pounder in 3 different movements. The collection process would be interesting. This is the lady you're talking about, correct? Her name's Mindy Stevens.
Yeah, she looks like somebody that would spend a good half a year shitting in buckets to take to the police station.
How old? Yeah. How old do you think old Mindy Stevens is here? How old? Take a guess.
I give Mindy. Well, listen, the sun's hot.
Just take a guess. I don't want any
sun's
deliberation. Like just a quick. How old does she look?
48.
Close, 46. Yeah. She looks like she's 65. Cops said an officer went out front to investigate the police station because there were 3 5-gallon buckets weighing 50 pounds. And he's like, this looks like shit. So some of the cops put on hazmat suits, went out and said, yeah, that's human shit.
That's poo.
And so they checked the cameras, got the woman's license plates. Indeed. Yeah, this is a great story. This woman spent several months. It's
shitting in a bucket.
Shitting and urinating, pooping and urinating in buckets.
Okay, so you gotta.
Then she delivered the waste stew to the police station because apparently she had several run-ins with the police. Believe it or not, this isn't her first run-in with the cops, by the way, just so you know.
I don't think anybody was thinking that she was doing it.
Yeah,
as a favor to them.
Like it wasn't like, hey, just in case you need some fertilizer, I made my own. That
what
kind
are you
of thing.
Doing? What are you doing, ma'am? I'm bringing you a present, officer.
Speaking of presents, speaking of weirdness, we have a big show for everybody today. Former neo-Nazi is going to be on the show with us today to talk about their radicalization into Nazism, out of Nazism.
Yes.
Karima is going to join us today because she's friends with this person, and their story is fascinating. So we're going to cover a whole bunch of that. That'll be interesting. Nowhere near as interesting as the predilection this woman has to poop in 5-gallon buckets, but whatever. And the other thing that kind of is starting to grind people's gears, and listen, I'm no hunter. I've hunted. I've shot things. I've eaten the things that I've shot, and I've not eaten the things that I've shot. Shotten isn't a word. I do understand that. I was getting carried away. But as we sit here in this beautiful country of Canada, before we get to our former neo-Nazi and Karima, who are going to jump on the show, I'm taken aback by this Carey Price stuff. Are you paying attention to this? You guys talk about it on the show this morning?
We did. I tried to weigh in on it because
hard to do.
It is because I was actually even suggesting. Well, it wasn't. It's not like I was sympathetic to Carey Price or hunters, but I was presenting a position of what I thought might be common sense to the approach of gun control in the country. But I did start by saying, you don't, and whenever you do this, you always open yourself up to scrutiny because there's always the gun guys out there that are like, you don't even know what a fucking AR-15 is. And of course, I don't. And but it is generally the one that people reference when they reference a gun that is used to do as much damage, to inflict as much damage as possible in a short period of time.
Yeah.
Right. So AR doesn't stand for a sight rifle. You fucking idiot. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. That guy. Right.
Yeah. That guy.
So anyway, this morning I said, hey, listen, I think the problem that we have in our country is that you can't have this conversation. And the federal government does not have a very good reputation when it comes to dealing with the gun community. They boot effed the long gun registry that cost millions of dollars, and it ended up being completely pointless. And then what I did say was, though, I said, I think when you're going through a process like this, I think they should have started by bringing in some gun guys and saying, all right, listen, here's the list. Is there anything on this list that doesn't make any sense? And if that's the case, then that let's have the conversation. And the reason why I don't disagree with what they're trying to do is because at the end of the day, I think here's my position on it. I don't care who you are, where you live, where you came from. You are never going to convince me that you need an AR-15. You don't need that gun. If you're a hunter, you need a rifle. I can wrap my head around the idea that you need a rifle.
Or a shotty, as they call them.
Or a shotgun. I don't think people, this is my opinion, and a lot of people are going to disagree with me. I don't think you need a handgun.
No, no one does.
I just don't think you do. But the issue is, if you're a gun guy and you like shooting guns,
you're going to have something
then you're probably angry about this idea that they're trying to do this. And then the argument stems from, they're not actually getting rid of guns. You're not making the country safer. So there's that argument. Let's put that aside.
Yeah.
I think what you end up doing with this collection of guns, and getting rid of guns that are unnecessary for hunting, in my opinion, I think what you do is you also add to the equation, we're going to go out of our way to do a better job of getting rid of illegal guns that are coming into the country.
Like adding that to the mix. Yeah.
Because that is a good point. Like, responsible gun owners in this country have a very good point.
Yeah.
We don't have a mass shooting culture, and we don't have a mass shooting problem in Canada. We have a crime problem. And when you take a look at the guns that are used in crimes in major markets in this country, generally speaking, and I don't know what the numbers are, but generally speaking, they are illegal guns that were smuggled into the country from the United States of America or other.
Almost correct, kind of incorrect. They're illegal guns in terms of they've been stolen. So something in the neighborhood of 60%, 70% of all gun-related crimes, specifically in Quebec, are from stolen guns, whether illegal stolen guns coming from the United States, stolen guns in Canada. They're stolen weapons. So the idea is, let's take a bunch of inventory out of the market, right? Let's give people less of an excuse to go steal guns, all that other stuff.
Which to your point, which again does make sense. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, because I kind of agree with the idea that, hey, listen, let's limit the number of guns in Canada.
Yeah,
and
well, especially guns that are just meant for one purpose, which is killing a human being. Like an AR-15 and a handgun and assault weapons, and the semi-autos with big clips and magazines, and great. No use, but. Let's backtrack and kind of set the table a little bit. Canada wants to rejig our gun restrictions. In Canada, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, you're not Canadian, or if you are Canadian, you don't understand this, we don't have a protected amendment to our Constitution or Charter of Rights that says you are allowed to own a weapon. It is a privilege. It is in the Charter. It is part of our laws that have governed this land for hundreds of years. Is that gun ownership is not a federally protected right. It is a privilege, and they can take that privilege away from you at any time. So let's just set that table. Trudeau comes in with this new thing, Bill 21, Bill C-21. It's basically a handgun restriction, 1,500 assault rifles, whole bunch of different weapons, including handguns and modification abilities to keep magazine clips under 5, I believe, and no powerful weapons over, I think it's like 10,000 joules, if I'm not mistaken. What that means, I don't understand. However, I will say this, is that there are a lot of really angry hunters, and I get it, right? Because what they've done is they've hustled this through, which is what Trudeau does. They hustle in like this policy that says we're going to restrict guns. Most of us are like, yeah, fuck, restrict guns because we're not a gun country. Very few people outside of mega cities here in this country or bigger cities have weapons. But a lot of people, because it's very rural, they do, and they use it for hunting, and they're all very responsible by and large. But we want to take guns that are too powerful or meant to kill people out of circulation. So there's that. Now, Carey Price, Montreal Canadiens, legendary goaltender, weighed in. And it caused a problem. And he did this 3 days ago. Today is the 33rd anniversary of the massacre of 14 women at École Polytechnique in Montreal. Okay? Keep that in mind. So Carey puts this post out a couple of days ago. The post, which is interesting, is Carey on his Instagram saying, quote, I love my fam. Now, keep in mind, Carey hasn't put anything on social media for months. He doesn't play for the Canadians right now. He's on LTIR. He has been dealing with some significant substance abuse and therapy issues. And we've all supported him, and I continue to support this man in his journey to wellness. Okay? Let me just put that out there.
I don't think he'll play again.
I don't think
Honestly.
he will, I think it's twofold. So Carey puts this out, quote, I love this on Instagram, love my family, love my country. I care for my neighbor. I am not a criminal or a threat to society. You remember the stock way that they were doing these things during the mandate where it's like, and Trudeau says, I'm a fringe minority. Remember that? Like, I love my family. I got a job. I work hard. Trudeau says I'm a threat. It's in the same vein. So you've got some issues there. I don't know where he got the format. Maybe he got it from his buddy Theo. I don't know. But he says, I'm not a threat to society. What Justin Trudeau is trying to do is unjust. I support the Canadian Coalition of Firearm Rights to keep my hunting tools. Thanks for listening to my opinion. Now, that created all kinds of pain points for Carey Price, not just Carey Price, but the Montreal Canadiens who put this out. On the eve of the National Day of Remembrance and Action, Violence Against Women, we reflect on the lives that were shattered 33 years ago in one of the worst mass shootings in Canadian history. This is, of course, the École Polytechnique, where this incel walked into an engineering class and killed a whole bunch of women because he didn't make the grade to get into the class. And I remember this like it was yesterday. You do too, right? I mean, it was just shocking back in the days, 33 years ago. I was like 16 when this shit happened. It was just like fucking mind-blowing to me. So the insensitivity of the timing of it, the insensitivity of Carey Price with a gun, the insensitivity of Carey Price being in Montreal and being a Canadian, where that massacre is revered as one of the worst events in Montreal's history, and rightfully so, where women were targeted, this has created another issue because last week, the Canadian Coalition of Firearms Rights Holders, the CCFR, who he said showed support, had a promo code to take 10% off you buying bullets, guns, flak jackets, vests, equipment to shoot things, go hunting. And the promo code for the CCFR was Polly. So these people clearly don't care about the massacre 33 years ago. These people clearly don't care. And Carey Price is caught up and he's in the middle of it. Now, Carey says he had no idea. He put out a post yesterday. He's like, I didn't agree with the promotional code either. Said he didn't know it. Said his views are his own and he believes them. The only reason I bring up this issue is because it's what's been brought up now, and not out of disrespect to anybody. He wants to keep his guns. And then he goes on to say, I continue to stand beside my fellow hunters, sport shooters who have legally acquired our property and use it in a safe manner. That is a very fucking serious point here. Okay. Now, there is outrage to be had. There is terrible timing.
Always.
The Canadians are very upset with him and apologized on his behalf. Carey has since come out and also apologized and said, listen, I don't know if you know this, but I didn't know about the massacre and I wasn't top of mind when I put it out. Totally understand how it was irresponsible of me, and I'm very sorry if I offended anybody. So he's kind of tried to walk part of that back, but the pain is still there, right? Like, this is a very serious issue for a lot of people. A lot of people have been affected by gun violence in a very negative way. And you got Carey Price standing there with a massive shotgun. It's a duck shooter, right? But Carey Price also, and his entire family grew up. He's indigenous. His mother was a chief. They've lived in the bush. They've survived off of
Williams Lake, right?
I don't know if it's Williams Lake. It's northern British Columbia. It might be Williams Lake.
I think so. Yeah, he's from the interior of BC, right?
Yeah. I mean, and there's something to be said here about not just people who use these guns responsibly, but there's also something to be said for the confusion that gun rights owners and real responsible activists that use these for hunting, for real hunting, left in the lurch because this bill doesn't identify which guns the government might take. And they snuck in an amendment at the last second saying, oh, yeah, and if it's super powerful, we're going to have a look at almost any gun, no matter what the gun is. And so you've got these hunters out there. You've got outdoors people out there. You've got people that partake in sustainable living by hunting and shooting their food going, are you fucking serious right now? Like, just can you just tell us what we're doing? Are you coming for our guns? And like COVID, the ambiguity that's out there, the inability to actually say, here's exactly what we're going to do, is lost on a lot of people. And it's fucking Trudeau and this government's fault. I applaud gun activism. I applaud the fact that we're trying to get rid of firearms. I applaud it. I really do. Much like I applaud Carey Price for standing there going, listen, my family has hunted on these lands for hundreds of years, and we're responsible people. And I also think Carey Price probably doesn't know, like everybody else, what he's talking about in terms of what guns might be taken away from him.
Well,
right? So there's that possibility as well.
No, there are some guns that have ended up on the list that that are used for hunting. That's been highlighted, and that's why they're walking it back a bit. That's why the federal government is saying, "Hey, listen,
as they should.
We are going to look at the guns that have been brought to our attention, and then we're going to reevaluate the list."
Yeah.
So I think the basis of his concern that there is some there. That's the problem, right? Because if you believe strongly in this bill, and you're a proponent of it, then and you might not give Carey Price or a gun owner the time of day. And then let's say you are a responsible gun owner, you take this as a front and you're being attacked. Like this morning, I literally brought up, I think they should have added to this plan a more concerted, and I do know that there is a segment of the police force in parts of the country that is very dedicated to smuggling illegal weapons into Canada, and they do get a lot. I saw something the other day where they caught a bunch of weapons coming into, I think it was Quebec, or was it Toronto?
In Toronto, they had a massive, it's called the Operation Barbell. I think they had like about 100 handguns that they captured from illegally coming into the country. Yeah. So we should be doing that.
But I think they should have put that out as part of the plan, right?
Yeah.
And again, there is going to be an element of the population. I think I've talked about Donald before, I'm pretty sure it's not even his real name. Donald just fights. He just gets up and he's angry every morning and is yelling at me for whatever I say. So I'm glad I provide him some sense of,
Is Donald a fictional name for?
No, Donald is an actual texter that we get on the locker room, and we were fighting about
Donald, like you're using the missus. Like is it?
No.
Donald really gave it to me today.
No, Donald is a real dick, but I don't know if that's his actual name. That's all. Anyway, he was yelling at me. You don't know what a fucking AR-15 is. You should shut your pie hole. I'm like, I brought up that as a reference point because I truly believe that I mean, and I've said this to friends of mine that own guns. I looked them right in the eye and go, you don't need that gun. There's no way you will ever convince me that you need that gun. I'm sorry. I don't care what your background is. You don't need it.
Yeah.
If you're a hunter and you have a rifle and you use that to go out once or twice a year, that I can wrap my head around. And those people are generally the most cautious. The hunters are the most responsible gun owners. I say this there's probably a couple of bad apples in the bunch, but I say this all the time too about being on the roads. I mean, the thing about being on the roads, generally speaking, if you're brave enough to get on a bike and drive a motorbike, you're probably one of the safer drivers on the road. Do they get credit for that? I doubt it, right? Because there's that one guy that's weaving through traffic on a crotch rock.
I think there's more than one guy like that, by the way.
There's more than
most
one
of the
guy,
guys
right?
I see that do that. Yeah. Usually on a little crotch rocket.
Yeah.
But anyway, times I want to just open up my door when those guys go by and I can see them coming up the middle. I'd do it.
Anyway,
I'd do it. I'm going to do it with this car maybe because it's an old car.
The problem is those guys are fighting those responsible, not all of them, some of the gun owners are fighting back about the bill as a whole.
Here's the thing. This is the thing. It doesn't matter what side, whatever side of this you're on, right? Like, because it's. I've watched people sewer Carey Price, who I thought was like a hockey deity up until this point, right?
Yeah.
And now he's been lumped in with Theo Fleury, who's literally off his fucking nut. Jamie Salé, who's insane. Dustin Penner, former Oiler again. Something in the water out there.
Pancakes.
Dustin Penner, who's literally a fucking conspiracy ferret. Like, I'm watching.
I didn't know that.
Oh, fuck. He's one of the best. Dude, you got to. I was going through his timeline last night just because I was like, someone mentioned Dustin Penner in my timeline. I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember him. He was like off his rock. He's like a weird club DJ who thinks like lizard people are out to get us and stuff like that. And it's fucking weird.
I just remember.
I went through his whole thing and I'm like,
the pancake thing.
I'm like, oh my God, Dustin Penner is one of these guys too. But Carey Price, let's just deal with him. Carey Price was just saying, I like guns. I like to hunt. My family's been doing it for 1,000 years. You guys are coming for me. Now, where did he get the messaging? Here's a great question. Because Trudeau isn't coming for people's guns. He's restricting certain guns, and there's going to be a buyback program or portion of this. Now, having said that, I think Carey's incredibly misinformed. I think Carey is also entitled to be a responsible gun owner. And I think there are a lot of people out there who need to be heard when it comes to the weapons that they own, when it comes to what they use them for. And if there are people and families and generations of individuals who, like, listen, hunting is a big deal. 2 of my buddies went duck hunting last week, and they're like, you got to come with us. We do it every year. We've been doing it for 40 years, me and my family. I'm like, sorry, I don't feel like sitting in the bush waiting for ducks to fly out and then ambushing them with a shotgun and hearing boom go off in my ears. Just not my idea of a great time. I'm like, do you guys want to go to Denny's for the moons over my hammy instead? And they're like, no, we're going to go.
Solid choice.
Yeah,
you can't go wrong with moons over my hammy.
No, you can't. Anyway, it's a fascinating conversation because there are a lot of really good people out there that use these guns for the express purpose, and there are a lot of people out there that are really afraid of guns. And by and large, generally in Canada, most of us are. Most of us don't want to live in a gun culture. We see how gun culture plays out in the United States. And listen, the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights can suck my dick. Seriously. They're such a bunch of fucking losers. They are just a bunch of fucking money-hungry, angry, dumb, lawyerly shitheads like the NRA in the United States, and their only goal is to put as many guns in the hands of as many Canadians as they can. So anything that they say, and to do a promo code, Poly last week, when this is the anniversary of the École Polytechnique massacre, I mean, that tells you all you need to know about these people. But don't treat Carey Price, who, by the way, was co-opted immediately after he came out, right? Co-opted by the entire movement. Some Rebel News festering sore was like, me too. I'm for Carey Price. She was from Quebec. And then Pierre puts it up, and then Lanceman and the Conservative Machine, and everybody gets around it, and they're like, Carey Price is one of us. That's what Theo Fleury was saying yesterday. Carey Price is one of us. And he might be. I don't know. But wait to find out before you fucking sewer the guy, for crying out loud. To put all your attention on the CCFR. Put all your attention on assholes. Put all your attention on lobby groups and the political machine that keeps this narrative alive. Fuck them. But wait for Carey Price. He apologized today, by the way, and that needs to be said. Anyway, go ahead.
The one thing that I'll just throw in there, and again, I'm not doing this because I'm from Alberta, but I'm not sure I trust, and I think this is part of the issue as well.
Yeah,
I don't think I trust this federal government to do this properly.
I don't either.
And I don't think that. I don't think the gun lobbyists or the hunters or anybody on either side of this equation should be comfortable with the fact that Justin Trudeau and his federal government is the ones behind this.
Totally agree.
Unfortunately, they're the only ones that will probably end up doing it unless the NDP got into power. Yeah. But I don't think they are going to do a decent job. And we'll find anything, and this is a Western Canadian thing, and I'm aware of it. So I always question it immediately, right away, because I do this as well. We'll find anything to hang horns on Justin Trudeau. And this is one of those, I think you can do that with this particular issue based on his incompetence and the Liberal government's incompetence in the past in handling this situation. They just didn't deal with it well, in my opinion. And it doesn't matter how they would have dealt with it. There would have been issues. But I mean, everybody just looks for anything that you can do to put horns on them. Like I had one guy today texting me, and I don't know if there's any truth to this, but he was like,
probably not.
I said to him, I'm going to need you to show me some proof. But this is how the conversation went. These assholes, they're going to screw this up. Look what they did in the past. I'm like, yeah. He says, not only that, they're coming for your guns. Not only that, the next thing we're all going to find out is how they hung on to some of the stuff from the Emergencies Act. It's still in play. And I'm like, you need to send that to me.
Yeah. Send me all that information.
Because I am pretty sure you're wrong there.
Yeah.
And he's like, it was in the National Post. And I'm like, well, then it'll be easy to find because I can't
and it'll probably be a lie too, because it's in the fucking National Post, which is literally owned by a U.S. hedge fund called Chatham Asset Management, and all they do is lie. They lie for clicks and money on behalf of the fucking cabal. So
apparently the Emergencies Act is still in play.
Okay,
some of the things that the police have unlimited power, and they will be coming to take everyone's freedoms away from them.
Well, I can't wait for that day, which is why we need guns, right? That's his excuse. It's why we need guns. Anyway, it is a big day here. We're going to move on from the gun. We're going to talk about this in the coming days. But we like to make sense out of things. It's like I'm trying to make sense of Carey Price, why he would wade into this. Maybe he's been bored. He hasn't tweeted since April 9th of last year, and this is what he chose to launch
somebody
into the
pulled him aside. Somebody pulled him aside and said, hey, listen, you're a hunter, your family's hunters.
We need you here.
Do you,
maybe.
I mean, listen, you know what's going on here, right? Justin Trudeau's coming for your guns. And we could use a figure, like we could use your celebrity in this movement. That's what that was. Yeah. Somebody from that organization. And make sure you tag us.
Dude, I hope it wasn't, though. I really like Carey Price. I really root for the guy. And if he's bought into this, like if this is his pivot from hockey, is being a spokesperson for the fucking the assholes that run the gun lobby in Canada.
I don't think it's
I'm sad.
Somebody knew him. Somebody, a friend of a friend of a friend said in that organization went, I know Carey. I know his family. They're from Williams Lake.
He'll tweet this.
Yeah, give him a call.
He hasn't tweeted since he went into rehab.
Exactly.
Like, it's fucking unbelievable to me. It's like, anyway, it's fucking fascinating. In keeping with fascinating things, please welcome to the program once again, lawyer, journalist, Kareem Assad, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, you're wearing the plaid today. It's plaid season. Nice to see you.
It's,
good
vibes.
We got it.
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? I always, whenever we get Karima on, I always think we're starting a painting class. Okay, everybody, get your easels out. Today we're gonna do finger painting.
Yeah, nice to see you. You look fresh. You look. Were you pandemicking with the Lugans this weekend out at Queen's Park again?
I had a 2-for-1. Actually, there was a rally on Saturday and one on Sunday. So I got my fill of that. And today was a good day.
Was it? Oh, why was today such a great day for you, Karima?
I love learning things. And I'm learning lots of things, just not to sound cryptic about it, but, puzzle pieces are coming together. You talk about making sense of stuff, and just sometimes the chips fall, and then in such a way that I see the bigger picture. So I'm starting to see the bigger picture. I'll leave it at that for now, but I feel good.
Me too. I know what you're talking about, so I feel good for you.
You're vague booking. You're vague potting.
She is vague potting, yeah. But we don't need to tell people our secrets. We don't need to tell people how the sausage is made. We just want to have people on who can tell us how the sausage is made. And over the past, I would say, 2 years, no one's been closer to the crazies than you. Nobody. Like,
I've been right up in there in that sausage.
All up in the guts of the sausage. And you've developed some really interesting relationships. The way that I like to kind of explain Karima to people, and like, what side is she on? I'm like, Karima's side. She's on Kareem. She's on the she's on the entertainment and truth side. That's what she's on. She's a documentarian. She is a truth teller. She's a truth seeker. That's what she does. I don't know anybody with better intentions, but you occupy this really interesting space where you go to these rallies and I mock them. I don't even fucking retweet them anymore. Sorry. It's just so crazy to me that people are still out there going, what about our freedom? And generally speaking, it ends with some guy in a cross and another guy talking about Jesus Christ, the Latter-day Saints. And then there's a fight at the end of these things. But these things still happen, and you do document them at Karima Rules on Twitter. But how do you describe the space? Because you're equally as kind to people and psychos on the extreme left as you are to the people on the extreme right. And I find that fascinating.
I really try to approach everything from, a humanist perspective is maybe the best way to put it. Mm-hmm. The most disturbing part over the past 2 years has been the way that language is used to dehumanize people we disagree with and put them into silos. And it happens on all sides of the political spectrum. And I don't think it ever leads to anything good. And calling something out, is not the same as drawing an equivalency. Everyone is all the same. I see that quite a bit. And the fringe left, the fringe right, it's not the same, but there are similarities. And if we're not able to talk about that in a meaningful way, then, what's the point? What are we doing here? So, to your question, right? How is, I don't believe that most people I think that very few people rather are irredeemable. Very, very few people are irredeemable. And I think that everyone actually has inherent value, not in the same way and perhaps not to the same degree, but everyone has value. And so in conversing with people, that's my starting point. And I'm there, to listen and to observe and to share what I find amusing at the rallies. And now I'm starting to do that a little bit more with things that are happening in the digital realm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you are. And I'm here for all of it. Sorry, Locke, go ahead. You want to?
Yeah, I want to add to that. I really like Karima's approach. And I think it needs to be highlighted as a very unique position, and one that I think we should all sort of be going after, like trying to achieve. Because I've been saying this for quite a few years, because you see, and from my vantage point, being somebody that's firmly in the middle and agreeing with left things and right things, seeing the damage they both do to their own cause by how they interact with each other, and the hypocrisy and the fact that they don't see the damage that they're doing, and is to me staggering. And like if you're sitting there constantly on the left bashing people on the right, what exactly do you think you're accomplishing? I would suggest nothing. If not, you're doing more damage. And it works the other way. And they both do it. They both use it as a tactic. And like I said, and the hypocrisy of it is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like
and there's very few people that feel like we feel. Like there are very few people that have the ability to use that. It's really weird. Reason. Very few people have the ability to reason, to say, listen, I'm not going to take a side. I'm not going to hate someone because I'm being told to. I'm going to stand here in the middle. And which is what makes Karima so fascinating, and our next guest so fascinating, is that they have that ability to occupy that space in the middle because of the experiences of seeing it all, right? Mm-hmm. Like Karima, you've spent 2 years watching this all. I've spent 2 years documenting, watching it, being threatened several times a day. And you know what? It's fascinating because when you're in the middle, those threats and that anger, they come from everywhere. You you can't go, oh, well, that, as a centrist, I know where that's coming from, is coming from the right. But as a centrist, it's might be coming from the left. But the hatred's the same. The hatred's exactly the same. And so that's what I find fascinating. And we lean on the experiences of people who have been radicalized by those groups. Gives me great pleasure to bring onto the show today a young woman who's responsible for taking out Heritage Front, a young woman who spent time as a neo-Nazi, an accomplished author, an advocate. Please welcome to the program, Elisa Hategan, ladies and gentlemen. Am I saying your name right, Elisa? Am I saying your name
Yes, perfectly. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here. I've heard so much about you. This is a relationship. Again, I go back to the conversation we had with Karima. She's able to have these incredible relationships and meet these incredibly colorful people that have lived these lives that give us the perspective that a lot of us have that are in the middle. But how did you guys meet? Like, what's because this is obviously Karima. Was it at a rally? Were you maskless? Did she accidentally run over you with your scooter? How does this whole thing work?
Please say a painting party.
Yeah, please say a
No, like many
event.
good relationships. It started online, actually. It wasn't until fairly recently that we met in person. And it was most likely over comments or something where there was a shared perception. I like chatting with people, in conversation, like the free exchange of ideas. So we've been dialoguing for what, Elisa? Maybe just over a year now, probably?
A year and a half. Yeah, about a year and a half.
Yeah.
Clearly,
Yes. So you guys obviously meet online, everybody, and I know who Elisa is because you're famous. I mean, you are.
So are all you guys. It's all right.
Can I make an observation?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Because at least I don't know you and I don't know much about your story. And Dean sort of gave me like quick Cole's notes just before we jumped on today. So we got this happening. Karima's gonna we're gonna talk about this. And so I had a picture in my mind based on what we can even refer to the title of the show today. Former neo-Nazi Elisa
Hategan. Yeah.
I had a picture in my mind about what you looked like, and this is not it.
Well, it was a long time ago. I was a neo-Nazi between ages 16 and 18. So many, a long time ago, and I've been out of the movement. I've been doing work to de-radicalize, to provide consulting services on educating about the far right. I wrote a book about it. It turns out that my father, who had died when I was a kid, happened to be Jewish. I discovered that, so I converted to Judaism. And essentially, I discovered in the last year from doing genealogy that I'm actually related by marriage to Bernie Farber, of all people. So, I'm a former neo-Nazi who is gay and who is Jewish and who happens to be related to Bernie Farber. So it's a bit of a mind twist, but yeah.
Wow.
We got all the bases covered there. Yeah, there's no way anybody could come after you being on our show. You have every.
That sounds like a drink you order at the bar.
Okay, so obvious question is, Elisa, how does one? Because like I grew up, my grandparents fought Nazism, physically fought it overseas. They're all decorated people. I come from a very proud heritage of people who fought Nazis. How does someone like yourself get attracted to neo-Nazis? How did you ascribe to become one at a young age? What was that process like?
So, it's really about the motivations. Like a lot of people who hate, or how we envision neo-Nazis to be, are people who hate, who are just like out to get another race. But often it starts from fear and from loneliness and various factors that end up being used by people who groom and radicalize young people. And for me, I immigrated from communist Romania when I was 11, and we had a lot of abuse in my family. And, it was a really rough environment. I ended up in group homes and foster care in Canada. So by 16, I dropped out of high school. I was really resentful about missing my homeland, not quite being able to fit in Canada. And that's when I was watching TV one day and I saw a guy talking about pride in your heritage and why can't we love our race and all this stuff. And he was wearing a suit. So going back to what you guys were saying about, I don't look like a neo-Nazi. I had this vision, like back in the 90s when this happened, I had this vision of what Nazis look like. And they were like what you'd see on Jerry Springer or Geraldo Rivera, like in, Nazi regalia and stuff like that. So I didn't realize that people could be just like people next door, like your neighbors or whatever. So once I joined the Heritage Front, I became part of this kind of recasting of what fascism is, like they realized that they needed to clean up their image. They put me front and center as a spokesperson for the organization. I was like on Montel Williams at 17 talking about how I'm representing the far right in Canada. So it was quite the rapid trajectory. And for me, it was because like I didn't even hate, a lot of races. Like I had resentments against some of the Black kids at a group home that I was in when I was 14. And I had been picked on because I growing up in a communist country, I didn't understand pop culture. I didn't understand rap music or Michael Jackson or Madonna and stuff like that. So I was picked like kids pick on other kids all the time, but I interpreted that as I'm an outsider, nobody likes me, I miss my whole homeland. So that's the kind of trigger that that made me vulnerable to join the group.
And during, I guess, while you were with the group, you talked about being sort of a spokesperson. What did your interactions look like? How frequently were you dealing with these people? What would they have you do? Like, what was that all about?
Yeah, like as soon as I joined, within, I was hanging out with them all the time. They became my family. Like the leader at the time, Wolfgang Droge, he was like a father figure to me. And like I said, my father had died a couple of years earlier, and I just kind of needed that family balance because I didn't have half the time when I ran away. They provided me shelter. They connected me with Ernst Zundel, who was like the leading Holocaust revisionist in the world for like 30 years. Operating out of Carlton Street Townhouse in Toronto. So I would run there when I got, when I needed a place to stay or when I wanted to eat or whatever. And so they became my family. I hung out with them all the time. I wrote for their magazine. I did anything they asked me to do. So I got dragged a lot to interviews where I was given lines to memorize, and everything was about how we were about pride. We didn't hate anybody, so on and so forth. While behind the scenes, I'm being told that there's a race war and that I need to start learning how to fire a gun and prepare for, the future race war where, so it was quite the dichotomy. But the other paradox that happened to me, and I say that all the time, is it's what I was leading. What attracted me the most is that they loved me. And the more they loved me as one of their own, the more I hated everybody else who they told me was opposed to them. So this weird paradox between loyalty and hatred that stemmed out of that. So I did anything they asked me.
You didn't experience a lot of love as a child because you had a shitty home life. And so this is addictive, right?
Yeah, it was like going from completely powerless and being bullied and being afraid to walk down the street at night because I was in Regent Park and I didn't have any friends and I was a dropout, to suddenly, like overnight, like feeling powerful for the first time, feeling like people were listening to me. And kids like me, they don't have adults to really care and ask them what their interests are, what do they want to do in their life. So that's the first time I got that. And it was incredibly addictive in the sense that I didn't feel alone for the first time in my life. I felt like I belonged. And that's one of the things that a lot of people being radicalized on by anybody. Like I've been part of networks that had former gang members, former jihadis, former Nazis, former anything. And that seems to be a very common trend among people who become radicalized.
I have a question about the Heritage Front, just because I don't know much about it. And my first thought was that they attempted
Racist
to be a
cause.
political.
That's what you call them.
Was it an attempt at a political party?
At first, yes. So they were trying to do several things. They call themselves an umbrella group of conservative citizens. They also, they had under their network a whole bunch of street skinheads who they called the brawn of their movement. They had, I remember at one point, a year after I joined, they were telling everybody to join the Reform Party, which was the leading conservative party at the time. So we had actually, yeah. So people were like, we don't have like.
Hang on, you're talking about Preston Manning's
Preston Manning,
Christian Reform Party, which
Yes.
is now the Conservative Party of Canada. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, one of the reasons why Reform collapsed was as a result of the scandal of Heritage Front members infiltrating it. And that was one of the affidavits that I provided information on. As I, just to quickly jump to how I got out, a couple of years in, there was a lot of harassment campaign. Like there was a second leader of the Heritage Front who was running the intelligence division behind the scenes, and he was Grant Bristow, who happened to be a CSIS mole. So he was passing around information on people, phone numbers, addresses of anti-racist activists, community activists, and I was told to harass certain people who. To basically break the law. Like they were doing a lot of nasty stuff, and I was uncomfortable with that. And it kind of put me in a position where I had to examine why I was involved in the first place, particularly when one of the people they wanted me to harass was a gay woman. And that kind of forced me to confront the fact that I was closeted and in this organization that was targeting people like me. And so I ended up, after a long personal journey, turning against the Heritage Front, spying on them for 4 months, writing and submitting about 30 affidavits to the OPP.
Wow.
Basically, I ended up on the run across Canada. I came back to Toronto to testify against Wolfgang and 2 other top leaders of the group. They were convicted of, basically setting up various hate hotlines in contravention of the court order, and they spent the summer of 94 in jail. And as they were in jail, Toronto Sun reporter Bill Dunphy, who had started to investigate what Grant Bristow was up to, partially actually as a result of the affidavits that I submitted, like about 8 of the 30 that I gave the cops involved criminal activity by Grant Bristow. So Bill Dunphy started to look into it, and then in August 94, there was this big revelation in the Toronto Sun that actually this was all, the co-founder of the Heritage Front and the co-leader, Grant Bristow, was part of a CSIS operation called Operation Governor. And in the span of about 5 years that they poured like millions into this operation, not a single Canadian neo-Nazi was ever arrested and convicted of anything. And then as a result of all this extra attention that came out of my defection, the operation was pulled. So inadvertently, I helped to destroy Operation Governor, and Grant's handler was not pleased. He was quoted by the Fifth. They said, actually, if anybody wants to learn more about Grant Bristow and the Heritage Front, look up this half-hour documentary on YouTube by the Fifth Estate. It's called Grant Bristow, Good for Business, recorded in 94. And it's on YouTube right now. So it'll show some of the victims of the people who were harassed and terrorized by Bristow.
Recorded in 94. It'll be in standard definition then. I don't think I can watch anything in standard definition. Just let you know.
On this though, right? So just to really drive this point home, it turns out that CSIS had a hand in creating this organization that was promoting and actively carrying out real life harassment, bringing people over to this side of hate. So that was CSIS involved. What level of institutional support did you have for your defection, for the aftermath? I already know the answer to this, but let's hear it. What support did you get?
So I got OPP protection at the courthouse during the 3 days I was being cross-examined and having all the Nazis in the Heritage Front wishing me death. I was already on a hit list. I didn't even get a change of ID. I was completely on my own. When I had met with the OPP about a month before I was forced to defect, and we gave them my affidavits, and all I asked was, please give me witness protection. And they said, well, just before we came to this meeting, we talked to our supervisors. We were told to stand off. They couldn't tell me what was going on. I later realized that the Operation Governor was at play, so they couldn't go and seize the AK-47s and start arresting people because CSIS had their hand in there. So when I was shocked because I didn't understand like how I could be denied witness protection. I was 18 years old, so I'm a kid. I just before I defected, I was called to Wolfgang's apartment. Him and another top member of the Heritage Front held me at knife point, forced me to take my clothes off, so they checked me for a wire. It was a very dangerous situation, and that night I basically got out of there. I ran home, got my duffel bag, and I was underground. And thanks to a lot of activists, regular people all over the country, I was like couch surfing, dumpster diving, living in shelters all over the country for 2 years. When at 18, with people wanting to kill me. Meanwhile, CISA swept in, got their boy out. They gave him $1 million package in Alberta to keep his mouth shut, I guess, because he never testified against anybody. He never led to any convictions. They did this whole spin where they said, oh, he averted dangerous plots, but they never charged with anybody with any crimes and any plots to do anything. So it was all a cover-up. They didn't even interview half the victims of Bristow's harassment as well. So while he was getting like, I think it was either $3,000 or $5,000 a month for several years afterwards, I was eating out of the trash because I had absolutely nothing, no protection. And his handler had said on the Fifth Estate that about me, he was quoted as saying, we'll tear her to shreds. And speaking about an 18-year-old girl who wanted to do the right thing. So that's the first time I realized that doing the right thing isn't always a good thing when it comes to police operations like this. So yeah, I was on my own. I didn't even have money to have a change of ID. I was completely suffering from PTSD and nothing, and they didn't care. They just protected their agent.
It's fucking wild.
I wrote about it in a book. I always forget to plug my book. So if anybody wants to read it, I wrote a book called Race Trader. It's on Amazon. It's the subtitled the true story of CSIS's greatest cover-up, because to date there's been very little attention. There was a 2017 article actually that came out about Grant Bristow, complete whitewashing, in the Toronto Star. There were hits on my website from the Toronto Star and on my blog, but the reporter who wrote this piece on Bristow didn't contact me. They did, however, quote Bernie Farber saying that he considered Grant Bristow to the date, as of 2017, he considered him a good friend, a man who wanted to do something real good for the country, which is kind of ironic for somebody who's heading an anti-hate organization, but that's for another day.
So what would these guys say about you? Like, you know,
they said, you know what they said? They started spreading rumors saying that I was a bicycle, meaning everybody had a ride on me. I never slept with any of them because I was gay. And one of the things was they kept pressuring me, even when I was underage, but I resisted it. So to have CSIS and Grant's handlers spread such misinformation about me was really disgusting. Luckily, it was before the age of the internet, so I just had to watch my back. I can imagine what I would have done if I had to read about it online as well.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, like, you know, we talk about the. I'm having a hard time digesting that part of your story, so I'm just going to ask you another question, and then we'll come back to that portion, which is the harassment, right? The harassment of a human being in the 90s is very different than it is now. We're lazy harassers. We're those people who's like, I'll just do it from the couch with my thumb. You know, I'll just send a little warning shot over the thing. Do I do it from time to time? Not harass, but definitely a couple of warning shots over the bow with a quick tweet. No big deal. Part of the game. I get it.
You've really grown.
Thank you, bud.
And we're very proud of you.
I appreciate that. What did harassment look like back then? When we're talking about you being harassed by these guys and you being followed by these guys, I mean, you know, you only, like you said, you only had to worry about the physical presence of somebody, right? But like that radicalization process, which, you know, we're in this great information warfare, I call it. It's a great information war. It's like, and you can start a war online at any time and it can literally turn into a war. It's fucked. But like back then when you're getting harassed, what is that harass? Like people leaving notes at your door, people like phoning your house. Like, how did that look?
So there's a couple of answers to that. The harassment that the Heritage Front perpetrated on activists involved a firebombing group home that ejected a neo-Nazi teenage girl. There was a group home that was firebombed twice. They stalked it was a black staff member from that group home who actually ended up being attacked and sexually assaulted. And when she went to the police arrested her and charged her with mischief. She happened to be defended by a really famous Toronto lawyer named Clayton Ruby, and I volunteered to appear as a witness on her behalf. And the police still didn't drop the charges till the morning of her trial, when I was coming in to testify on her behalf. And then they dropped the charges, but they never followed up on who did it. Other people had their car tires slashed. They'd had windows broken. There were phone numbers and addresses that were circulated, passed out by Grant Bristow himself, with basically saying, call these people 24/7, make them have a mental breakdown. So there was a lot of physical, escalation. Now, as far as what happened to me, I knew that they were capable of anything. I mean, if these people were firebombing and attacking, and there was a series of beatings that happened in Toronto after Heritage Front rock concerts, where 3 Tamil men on separate occasions were beaten up, and one died and one ended up being paralyzed. And the one who was paralyzed, a Heritage Front skinhead was convicted for that assault. So, I knew they could do anything. When I was on the run, I happened to be in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, staying for a couple of weeks with a Black reverend out in Dartmouth. And the phone started ringing, and there were voices on the other line saying, "We've seen you. We know where you are." And I was freaked out. I didn't, and I said, "You're bluffing." And then they described what jacket I was wearing the day before. So I knew that I had been found there. And then I had to leave Nova Scotia and come back through Quebec to Ontario. So ultimately, there's something to be said about armchair activism in the digital age. It makes people lazy, and sometimes that's a good thing.
Yeah. Karima, question?
This is crazy.
Right? I know. It's fucked up. Karima, you got a question?
Yeah, I guess in comparing sort of from your vantage point now as someone who uses social media and you see online harassment manifest, what are your thoughts on some of the similarities and differences the 90s till today?
The difference is, well, I was able to be instrumental in shutting down the Heritage Front through just simply by testifying against Wolfgang and the 2 other guys, and the fact that my affidavits were also used in the investigation of Grant Bristow and eventually his exposure. And so the group collapsed. Now, what would have happened if this was going on today is the material, the information, that would all continue to be uploaded to the internet by other members, and it would be like a whack-a-mole scenario, which means you can never shut it down, really, because it propagates, and it's no longer restricted to a certain area like Toronto or Ontario or parts of Canada. It's everywhere. It crosses borders. And so I know that like Anders Breivik, the shooter in Norway, or Dylan Roof, they were all seen frequenting the Stormfront and some of the other neo-Nazi websites. So those websites that continue to radicalize and continue to provide the memes and the information that's out there even after people go to jail. So that's the scarier part of the digital age, is you can never pull the information away. Yeah.
Sorry, Locke. Locke, you go, and then I'll ask another question. Sorry about that.
Well, I have a question just about the radicalization process today. And because I remember hearing about the Heritage Front, and they didn't really shy away from what they were. And now I think the radicalization process is considerably different. And obviously, I mean, we just touched on the fact that the internet plays a big part in how those differences might be. But are there organizations that we might not know about that are similar to what the Heritage Front represented back in the late 80s, early 90s? Elisa?
I think there are. There's a lot of, but perhaps not as overt in causing the, in carrying out the criminal activity. I think there's a lot of assembling and exchange of information and planning and things like that, using the internet as a platform. But you know, I mean, it's not something that ever stops, right? I mean, extremist groups are always going to be around. This sort of like mobilization online is going to happen faster and faster. But of course there are. I just haven't seen, like, to date, based on what I've seen of the Canadian hate movement, I have not seen a movement exactly like the Heritage Front commit the kind of crimes that they've committed, and you know, and be basically ran by a CISA small. Like,
is that a good thing though? Like, is that a good thing that we don't have a Heritage Front type fucking paramilitary group of people willing to firebomb and be like it? Because we're not really seeing that with the. I mean, you were hearing about it,
the organization,
and I fucking hope the guy is. I can't fucking stand anybody associated with Diagolon, and I think Jeremy McKenzie's an enormous piece of shit. Not the argument we're having today, but in terms of, like, you know, comparables, are there comparables that you've seen? Because you still do a ton of advocacy and training, and you teach people how you de-radicalize individuals from both sides of the equation because you're a centrist. But, like, are you seeing any comparables today to what you saw yesterday?
Not in terms of the actual activity or criminal activity being carried out, but in terms of the character, the personality of the people, they're very similar. There's a lot of we used to have in the Heritage Front members of the Airborne Regiment, which ended up being disbanded after the Somalian teenager was killed in the barracks in Somalia, and military guys were taking pictures with his body.
So I remember that.
Remember, I forgot his name, but so we had, you know, there's a lot of military interest. I mean, one of the affidavits that I exposed was a Toronto police officer who was a member of the Heritage Front. He was on the mailing list, and that was another reason why I was afraid of Toronto police. So, you know, military guys were prime recruitment material. They would be trained with paramilitary training, and we were told, like, if you want to learn how to make explosives, how to fire guns, just get trained by the military, you know. So the point is, while the organization, there is no comparable organization going out there firebombing and harassing and terrorizing people like in a concentrated, you know, fashion the way the Heritage Front is. The personality types, the military factor, that is still at play, and that's what makes it dangerous, because it's harder to see and monitor what's happening when it's all hidden in secret chats and things like that. So it's a lot harder to monitor that stuff as well.
It's decentralized as well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you had to physically go to Zundel's house. Like, you had to physically go somewhere.
Yeah, you have to physically recruit people to sit down at a pub and go, hey, you know, we're such a cruel group, and, you know, come socialize with us. Like, you know, you don't have to do that. You can be completely different. You can be anybody you want and recruit anybody across North America if you want. Like, you know, it's decentralized. You can get a lot more recruits that way because you're not concentrated, you know, localized to a specific area. So the potential is a lot worse, but, you know, I have not seen the kind of, you know, committed, you know,
real shit. But okay, so here's a quick question, and then I'll shut up and let everybody else ask questions.
No.
I'm gonna shut up. Don't worry, I will. I'll get there. I'll get to shutting up.
I don't want you to shut up.
Well, I want to, because I'm interested in listening to all you. You're all smarter than me. You're asking great questions, and Lisa's a great guest. Okay, so I'll shut up. But here's a question I have. Same MO, same people. Like, you talked about how you got love from Heritage Front, so you felt like you were part of a community, felt powerful, felt taken care of, felt secure for the first time. Do you see them using the same tactics online?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's the risk. Like, I understand that this is a reason why, you know, these groups must be monitored. Where my concern is the not to exaggerate or make more of them than they are. And, you know, and there's a lot of conflict of interest in groups that have a reason to exaggerate or overinflate the number of hate groups in Canada. And so that's something that does concern me. But yeah, definitely, they need to be monitored, because it's very close. Like, when you it's to go back to the whole conversation about forgiveness and redemption, right? If you take away everything from a person, so there used to be like cancel culture. If someone is in a certain group or whatever, you take away, you get them fired, you whatever. So when you get them to the point where they have absolutely nothing except their echo chamber, that's when they become the most dangerous. When they don't have a job, when they don't have any kind of community connection, and they're just kind of a lone wolf, they can go rogue. And that's what I'm concerned about, is this kind of social isolation that pushes people into becoming even further radicalized.
So on that then, if the issue of isolation is what drives people, but then how do we reconcile this with, don't talk to people who hold bad views, shun them, sort of keep them? What's the best way in your mind to actually interface and get someone out of a rabbit hole?
So you can't do any of that if you're not willing to at least open a channel of communication with them. And we're living in such polarized times that now communication is interpreted and construed as collaboration immediately. So you can't have a debate with somebody. You can't,
True.
Communication is collaboration. And so you can sit on your virtue signaling on the internet and shut up people and try to, vilify people who do try to de-radicalize others, or at least try to understand. And if we don't have these conversations, this is causing even more populism, even more echo chamber, right-wing manifestations. So this is like the way this is being approached and tackled right now is like literally the worst thing you can do, which is just punch a Nazi is like the only acceptable measure of de-radicalization. I'll tell you, when I was a kid, if somebody came up to me and punched me in the face or spat at me, you think that it would be like, oh yeah, I want to go to the left now. I don't think so. So, people are afraid. Like, we live in a country where 50 years ago, Canada was like 90% white, and people in rural areas want to talk about the demographics. They're afraid. They think like, oh my God, my rights are going to be taken away. These people coming off the boat, they're going to take my job away. They don't realize those people they're afraid of, they have nothing. And so I try to show that when I just to go back to the original question, I think that if we don't have some sort of like way to reach out, and there's a couple of organizations that try, but there's not really, there's a Montreal organization called Info Radical that has a hotline for people to call family members, and they can talk about the young people.
Can you imagine being on the other end of that hotline, though, like getting that phone call? Hi, I'm on an 8-hour YouTube binge right now, and I'm starting to think some crazy shit. I'm starting to think some crazy. I mean, a hotline doesn't do it, right? The only thing that does it is like in a relationship, like talking to somebody. Yeah. But
then you run the risk of being labeled as one of them, because if you lower yourself, then you are them, right? So this is the sick thing, is there's no de-radicalization, it's just amplification. And what's happening with the right wing is they band together around common causes, whatever conspiracy or whatever common cause it is, as Karima knows, whereas the left, they seem to nitpick at everything, and there's this constant purity spiral where
fucking help. It's because they're pussies.
And so how are you gonna deter people from joining the far right when you're terrified that if you even like talk to somebody, you're gonna be considered a traitor and be on the firing squad end. So there's never any communication with people across the barricade of the whole political spectrum. We're just in silos at this point.
It was so well said, and I hope people are hearing what she's saying. I hope you're self-aware to figure out if you're part of the problem and not part of the solution. So thank you for that. I do have a quick I need to interject, because I live in Alberta, so I see the right and I see the left, and I see it from a very different perspective because I'm doing a radio show every day, and I swear to God, about once every 2 weeks, somebody tells me, what we got to stop doing? We got to stop giving the immigrants cars when they come to the country. There's a belief that they get a free Toyota Corolla when they hit the airport in Calgary. And I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, you believe that, and you cannot convince these people otherwise.
No. Well, but that's the question I have.
In their mind, they get a free car and
a free
life
house.
Is just dandy. I want
your job.
Why
And
don't I get a
they
free
get
car?
your car, they get your house, they get
It's
your job.
amazing.
And there are men out there that think, and you know what they're coming for next? My wife. And you're like, okay, relax, shithead. It's not the case. And it's but going back to the same thing, was that the selling point for neo-Nazism back in the day, like it is for fascism now, which is like, were you told like ad nauseum, they're coming for our stuff? Is that what you were told? Because
Yeah.
it's the same. Is it like 30 years later?
Same
It's the same fucking
strategies.
messaging, right? Same
It's
strategy.
the exact same. Like the message is absolutely the same. Yeah.
So do you see
And like
the
I said,
neo-Nazi
when
messaging in like
when my
conservative
parents and I came
politics?
to, we had nothing. Just that we
Yeah.
didn't get a car. We didn't
You
get
didn't
anything.
get a free Toyota?
No.
Can we talk a little bit about your book? Did I get the name right? Race Trader?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's available on Amazon if I wanted to buy that.
Yep.
Also, do you have an audio? Like, is there an audio book version of
He
it?
doesn't like reading words. He likes hearing the words. He can't.
Not,
He gets
no, not yet.
confused with like sentences.
Yeah, you should work on that. You should work on that. Yeah,
He's an auditory kind of guy. That's fine. You know your
I
strength.
am.
Yeah.
I
He
got
is.
lots of TV shows to watch. There's so much on Disney right now. I don't have time to read.
Karima, you have a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask about sort of the landscape when the Heritage Front was at its apex, and you were there. What did resistance to that look like in the outside world? How was the media dealing with it? How were citizens dealing with it? Is it different than today?
Not terribly different in the sense that there was a group of anti-racist activists who would be, I guess, the equivalent of Antifa today. And anti-racist action would protest at all the courthouse meetings that the Heritage Front showed up at. They would protest in front of venues like the Latvian Hall and others. So you know, there would be like street clashes and fighting and territorial areas that's considered, that's ARA territory and you don't go in there. So it was like a lot of street brawls and street fights and things like that. In terms of the media, they couldn't get enough. They would broadcast the polarization, the controversy, because it's, I mean, what we've called now clickbait, right? So there wasn't a lot of difference really in the way they were reacting, the backlash against the Heritage Front then versus now.
Just terminology, right? Things change on how we present it. You know, it's interesting. I'm watching a show right now called City on a Hill, and it's based in the late 80s, early 90s, I think. And it's funny. They're complaining about the overly politically correctness of the world. And I'm like, shit, that hasn't gone away, eh? They just didn't call it being politically correct. So yeah, things just morph into a different approach. Yeah. And the line
and
moves
just to one other point, in terms of like law enforcement's approach to the Heritage Front was very lackadaisical. They weren't really going after them. But again, it could be that they were told off from the background, because I know in a few months before I actually joined at 16, Grant Bristow had been arrested with a couple of guns in his truck, and Metro Police was going to charge him and all that. And then his agent swept in and cleared it all up, and, you know, they left. So, possibly there was a combination of factors. The Metro Police was, was somewhat. There was a climate of a lot of protests, a lot of horrible things that the Metro was doing at the time. They were doing like illegal strip searches of Black women when they would be arrested. So there was deadly laws, and the Black Action Defense Committee was protesting on the streets, and so the Heritage Front played up on that. On that animosity between the police and the Black community by wearing like little blue ribbons. And when there would be rallies, they would go up to the police and say, "You're doing such a fine job, officer."
Oh, just like today. Just like today.
Thin blue line, right? Thin blue line.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
my
so
God.
the police
we've done
would
this
be-
before.
And whereas, and we'd, Wolfgang would shake hands with a hate crimes unit officer, and then they say, like, look at all those like crazy Black bloc, like with a masked anarchists who are like, fuck the police and all that, right? And so that's how we got to get away with a lot of stuff. There wasn't a lot of enforcement of going after the Heritage Front at all, which was surprising. So, but
Can I get you to clarify your opinion of Grant Bristow? Like, I know you've you've sort of
offer a little more clarity as to how much
So
of
do
a
you-
doucher this guy is.
I'm a
We
little bit
brunch together.
I do get that you have got him in a certain, like, you've put him in a camp, and I'm kind of putting him there too based on how you're telling the story. But do you think that was he more a part of CSIS or the Heritage Front? Do you think
Well,
he believed in the Heritage
He was a
Front?
believer. He was absolutely a believer, and
Wow.
you can see that in that video on the Fifth Estate, even though it's not in HD, if you look it up. But yeah, he was a believer. He was he creeped out people in his previous jobs. People said he was a racist before he ended up being recruited, and ultimately, he got off on terrorizing people. I mean, and particularly women. I remember being given like names and phone numbers of women in particular and asking him, well, why are we going after the women so much? And he said, like, he just looked at me and said, women are more emotional. They're easier to break. And just to, instead of describing how I feel about him, I'll tell you what he tried to get me to do when I was still a minor. He gave me the phone number of this woman who her only sin was that she was part of the ARA group and she was a lesbian. And he wanted me to call the telepersonals and all the sex hotlines at the back of like Now Magazine and Extra Magazine and pretend I was her and say, hi, my name is so-and-so and I'm into black guys coming to my house and this is my address. And I have these fantasies to be beaten with chains. So he wanted me to give her address and record that message. And I couldn't do that because I just, it was so out of left field. And that is who Grant Bristow was. He would call other people with me on a three-way call. So he'd tell me to be quiet. He would call people and terrorize them. He would call somebody's employer, somebody's landlord and say, your employee is a pedophile. He's a violent anarchist. He's a criminal. Don't you want to,
But like kind of people with how they do it on Twitter today. It's the same thing. They just did it with like phone calls and it was a much more personal touch.
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
that was Grant Bristow. And like I said, there's not even one single arrest and conviction of anybody that they can point to. They keep pointing to these white supremacists from the U.S., Tom and John Metzger, who apparently had come in and then Grant and CSIS got them deported. They didn't even deport them till after they came and did their speeches in Toronto. And Grant was the one who arranged to smuggle them in by dressing them as rabbis because they were on a no, don't let them in. But they figured Rabbi Metzger, it sounds Jewish, right? So they dressed them up as rabbis and got them smuggled in over the border. That's who Grant Bristow was. He got a 3-car garage house in Alberta. He got $3,000 or $5,000 a month for several years.
Great deal.
Wife had full expense paid trips to Ontario anytime she wanted, and all of this for what exactly? For creating, because he created the Heritage Front. When he was recruited by CSIS, he joined the Nationalist Party, which was a party that preceded the Heritage Front. He joined the Nationalist Party. He got to know the guys there. He got to know Wolfgang. And then when they were up to Libya, they were invited by Muammar Gaddafi on an all-expense paid. Yeah, Libya, the Libyan collection. So they were invited there for the anniversary of Gaddafi's regime, whatever. And he invited everybody. I don't know, IRA, whatever kind of terrorist groups, he invited over. And when they were in Libya, Grant and Wolfgang and a couple of other people sat down and Grant sold Wolfgang on starting a new organization because the existing leader of the Nationalist Party was very controlling. And I'm saying that Bristow couldn't quite control or take over the organization. So the idea was introduced that let's say a new group, we can control it, we can do whatever and get away from that guy. But they did the moment they came back to Canada. And so he was a co-founder. He would whip out his American Express card, pay for stuff. He would fund rental halls. I'm not sure if the rental hall where the skinhead who ended up beating that Tamil man, that the concert that was held was actually paid for by Bristow, but I know he paid for other rentals. So the point is they paid for this. They fueled it. They encouraged criminal activity. They told airborne skinheads. They told skinheads with criminal records for assault, here's the number and the house address and the, whatever of our enemies. He counseled a minor to commit crimes. So yeah, that's who Grant Bristow was. I don't even have to give my opinion because I think you can guess what it is.
Yeah. I just did a quick peek on Wiki. I wikied Grant Bristow. It's like Grant Bristow. And it's like, it just says spy. Spy. He was an undercover spy or mole for the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS, who co-founded, successfully infiltrated Heritage Front white supremacist group for 6 years.
Created it too.
Several months after the assignment, he was exposed by the Toronto Sun reporter Bill Dunphy, as you have laid out here, August 1994.
Based on some of my affidavits as well.
Yeah, and you're widely reported as being the person that incidentally took down Project, what's it called? Operation Governor, right here.
Mm-hmm.
And there's his visit to Libya with the National Party, introduction to the far right, career in CSIS work. Do you worry like that maybe you got in the middle of something else? Like, so because there's something else going on here, right? Like, so, and I want to just bring this up.
I think what happens is like, you know, one thing that I had to understand about the way government organizations and policing or undercover work, they don't go looking for somebody who smells like roses. You know, they look for people who are shifty, who will fit into a criminal gang. You know, those are their informants typically, right? So, you know, the guy was a believer. He did what he did. They got off on it. There was an internal report going around to the Governor General's office by somebody who passed on a memo that said, we're concerned there's an agent in the field who's doing something that, you know, might be controversial. And they hid that memo and they charged Brian McInnes, who was the guy who was the guy who worked for the Governor General's office. They charged him under the Official Secrets Act, and eventually that was dropped. But the bottom line is there were, you know, you see this across other organizations and other policing bodies where, you know, you're constantly operating, you're monitoring an organization, and 1 year goes by, 2 years go by, nothing really happens. There's just a lot of bitching and complaining and, oh, we're going to take over. We're going to like shoot up people in the race war, but nothing gets done. So you know what they do at that point to justify the operation? There's this kind of nudging process that happens at least, you know, and I mean, Bristow went beyond nudging, but there's this kind of like encouragement, like, okay, let's give them some targets. Let's stir it up a little bit more so that we can justify this ongoing thing.
So was he a spy playing a Nazi or a Nazi playing a spy?
He was both.
I mean,
he was a Nazi. He was a Nazi playing a spy. He taught us how we were all like getting off on it because he had created the intelligence division of the Heritage Front. So he was training all of us to be spies. And that was the cool thing that he would like, how he would get everybody on board.
You get a magnifying glass, at least? You get, no? You get a walkie-talkie? No.
But he taught us how to hack into answering machines. He taught us how to disguise our voices, how to avoid surveillance, how to listen to police scanners. He taught us all that. And he taught me, this is why I don't even vote. He taught me how to go to the Metropolitan Library and look up voters' registry records in these books and figure out at each house address who the names of everybody who's registered as a voter. So that's how we could find out who lives at whatever residence. So he taught all these people these skills because he was our intelligence chief. So he was turning all of us into little mini Grant Bristow spies.
And that damage like can't really be calculated, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Know what everyone did after.
And then I remember being part of it and going to like this, because I was interested in like Irish politics and going to this Irish Freedom Association, which was like a completely more like a left.
I'm not even interested in Canadian politics, but you're interested in Irish politics. That's
well,
awesome.
I was going through a phase. Yeah. I was going through a phase of being a revolutionary, and I didn't care if it was left or right. I was just like really intrigued in that. So then when I went to that meeting, he wanted me to take down the names of everybody I met at that meeting and give it to him. So I ended up giving him information, not just on whatever he was trying to get me to spy on and find out from, you know, all this sleuthing, but I was like giving him information on organizations that were left-wing in Toronto, and I had no idea. So he certainly provided CSIS with a lot of material that was just used for intelligence gathering, certainly not to stop any crimes.
So, question for the table. Does this not make you wonder? Yeah, right? Does this not make you go, okay. If he was a Nazi spy / spy Nazi, right, who started Heritage Front, which was Canada's most dangerous neo-Nazi organization ever, right?
In modern history, I guess since the Klan of the 1920s, yeah, in modern history, yeah.
You got to wonder how easy it is for certain institutions to whip the same kind of crazy rage and divisiveness up on behalf of local government, federal government, provincial government. I mean, you know, if you don't know that you're dealing with a guy who's actually working for Canada's spy agency, and he's literally, this is in the 90s, and it is documented, and they are, I don't know if maybe CSIS is like, let's give him a sweet wiki page where it makes him look like a spy. I don't know. I mean, I'm hearing about all this for the first time, but my mind immediately goes to 2021, 2022, the information warfare that we see, and who's kind of actually behind it, right? Like, I'm immune to it just because I look at it in binary. And sure, I get attacked on a daily/weekly basis, but I know where it comes from, generally speaking. But my God, could you imagine not knowing that this might be someone working for an institution in Canada that you think is supposed to be keeping you safe at night? Like, seriously, which is my question. And I kind of asked it about like 10 minutes ago before we got sidetracked into something better, obviously. But like, is it possible you stepped in the middle of an ongoing operation that you weren't supposed to? Like, is it possible that, I don't know, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here because I kind of have to.
Something with a bigger, like
is it possible that before Grant Bristow could come out and go, here, look at me, I'm not really a Nazi, I'm a spy, look at that, I did all this stuff. You know how those guys came back from killing Obama? It's like, I'm writing a book because it's way better and it pays better than working in the, like, that's what I would expect to happen after a guy is a celebrated CSIS spy, helps take down an organization. But it wasn't him, it was you, right? But that's my question, is it do you think maybe you fucked something up by mistake? I don't know.
Well, I mean, of course I fucked it up. I fucked it up, and I was punished for it. I was torn to shreds, like they said that I would be. They told the Fifth Estate. You know, of course, I had no idea that I was just trying to stop them from hurting my friend. You know, the people who were trying to help me, the woman who I ended up calling, who was being terrorized by them, and I was afraid that they were going to do something to her. So I inadvertently, you know, I wanted to get them back. I felt bad for what for my own motivations. I certainly had no idea I was getting in the middle of this whole operation. And just to answer your question about could there have been an ongoing operation that could have resulted in something, he was involved from 89 to 94. In that 5-year operation, nobody was arrested, no plot. I mean, only when the Security Intelligence Review Committee later, reviewed things and said, oh yeah, he averted danger, he averted criminal act. About what? They never provided a single shred of evidence of anybody who was ever charged, of any tangible plot, nothing. And so in 5 years, if you haven't gotten a single person arrested and you guys are just like having fun, terrorizing people, blowing up shit in the streets, spray painting synagogues and, mosques and whatever, like what is that? That's just like, and before I forget, his handler, who I'm not going to name, but he's very easily found. His handler was Grant's handler, came from the same RCMP department that was disbanded before CSIS was created. So if you guys look into the history of CSIS, they came out of the RCMP, which was involved in a lot of dirty tricks in the 70s, and they were blowing up barns and blaming it on the FLQ, so that there would be all these war measures and things that would happen. And I have my opinions about something like this happening today, right? Because there's a pattern to this stuff. But they were setting up the FLQ and they blew up this barn and there was this whole scandal. And then they decided to disband RCMP. But did they fire them? No, they just transferred that whole department over to the newly minted Canadian Security Intelligence Committee Service. So, I wonder what kind of sense of accountability, and everything is hidden before CSIS asset privilege. Like how do you scrutinize? How do you go after these guys where there are laws in place to ensure and guarantee their anonymity, right? There's also the fact that they were terrorizing this Native Canadian Center director named Rodney Bobbywash. And unfortunately, Rodney died in 2002, but he was also instrumental in making sure that I would be protected. He hid me on an Indian reserve at one point. He let me stay with him in Ottawa at one point. So he wanted to sue them for psychologically terrorizing him. And the things, they were spray painting the Native Canadian Center. They went after the Indigenous community. But how do you sue CSIS, right? It's such an unfair imbalance of power and one that could perhaps be mediated if you just had some sort of a accountability or transparency, but clearly that's not the case.
There is a
Okay,
lot underneath here. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So can you give us just a little bit of your speculation about what's happening currently?
I think there are certain organizations that are tasked to be at arm's length from the government, but that are funded by the government and whose members have connections and consider Grant Bristow friend. And so, organizations like that like to operate under the veil of anonymity, when in fact they should be scrutinized the most, and organizations that have only been around, say, 4 years, who expect the kind of anonymity we don't even expect out of the Toronto Star or Maclean's magazine that have been around for 100 years, but you don't see half the reporters suddenly deciding that they're going to go anonymous and just trust us, bro. We know what we're doing, take our word for it. We have certain expectations of journalism, right? We have expectations that people who are accused of being neo-Nazis or criminals or whatever can confront their accuser. And now what we're seeing is these arm's length, yet government-funded organizations who are developing somewhat of a monopoly in determining what is a Nazi, what is hate, what is a hate symbol in Canada, being allowed to act just like CSIS, like use anonymity, use whatever unethical, shady methodology, not transparent, to label people as extremists, and that's concerning me, because CSIS has operated by proxy through the Heritage Front and through other organizations as well. So don't blame me for being suspect.
Yeah, no, you're
well. Now we know why you're friends with Karima.
Yeah, it's
that
was
a well-placed sip.
That's a problem that I think people like us have on a daily basis, right? Is that there's a huge swath of the Canadian population that sits here and goes, we know, I can see it, we know about the crazies over there, we know about the crazies over there, we know about the amplification process. Some of us actually know who's in charge of it. And some of us have a problem with nefarious means. So you don't hear these stories on a regular basis. It's the gaslighting. We're talking to a faux Nazi who closed down the most dangerous neo-Nazi organization in Canada's modern history, Elisa Hategan. And we're talking about extremism and the kaleidoscope of it. We're not talking about one side. We're not talking about the other. We're talking about specific examples and how they feed into the environment that guys like Lachlan, myself, and Karima sit in the middle of, taking bullets from every side. And it goes to explain to people that, listen, all things are not what you think they are, right? Yeah. If you're on
the enemy is not necessarily the person across the barricade and the political divide. It's the person who is manipulating the message and the laws, and the message is used to twist and create new draconian laws to further censor all of us on every side of the barricade.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, and if they can't do it through policy, if government can't do it through policy, what they do is they've got these podunk little people and organizations that they infiltrate on the side that do it for them. And it's right wing, it is left wing, it is all about the game.
They're
and
all
the game is, how do we make people, how do we win the perception war? How do we help people? How do we divide people? How do we keep them busy in the middle? How do we keep them out of our political hair? How do we keep them out of our exactly? And so all of this is a ruse. And we've been talking about this for so long that I feel like we're finally getting to the bottom of it. And I feel like we're finally getting to the bottom of it with people who have been abused by the system, abused by the institutions involved. And not only that, people who have been shut up through a series of legal issues, through being charged, through being sued, through being smeared, through being told that this is who you're dealing with. So watch out. Otherwise, you're just like them. That's not the case. That's what the dill holes on the left and the dill holes on the right want you to believe, is that you're going to lose it all if you go all in with them or have a conversation with this guy. I'm telling you right now, we are going to get underneath this thing, and we're going to have a good look at what's underneath the car of fucking extremism, the hate space in this country, how it works, because I'm fascinated by it. And the reason why I'm fascinated by it is because I'm uncancelable. So I can do it. And not only can I do it, I'm going to do it. And we're going to find out from a whole bunch of people how this works. How does it work? How do you keep an entire country on a fucking ledge with their fingernails like this, wondering if their neighbors are psychos or if they're allowed to go to a dinner party because that person's tweeted this yesterday? Like, how do we do that? That's what I'm interested in. And then how do we take all that blame and shift it onto the people who deserve it? Not the people like you, not the people like Karima, not people like us or Lachlan. Dude, we're all in the middle. We're in agreement that we're in it for a strong Canada. We're in it because we believe in our neighbors and we don't care about their religious or political beliefs, as long as those beliefs mean you don't hurt me, I don't hurt you, and you don't hurt everybody around you. But we're in this fucking weird cauldron of stupidity where, like, hey, listen, we're all in this. It's like a game to some people. It's like, let's hurt each other and see who can hurt the other person fastest and longest. And when it comes to sticking up for people I work with, or when it comes to actually having this conversation, I'll have it all day long. And I don't care where the truth lies, Elisa. I really don't. And Karima knows this about me. I think, Locke, you're the same too. If the truth lines up to support someone on the right, that's where the truth is. If the truth lines up to support someone on the left, that's where the fucking truth is. And we'll find it. And that's why I was so grateful that you came on today, Elisa. I hope it wasn't that onerous or scary, and I hope you had a little bit of fun at the same time. You're reliving some of the most terrible moments I've ever heard of anybody's life ever.
You're safe now?
Yeah, but I take precautions. I don't have anything in my name. I don't have a driver's license. Everything I have is in other people's names. And, Wolfgang was shot to death in 2005, I believe. Ernst Zundel died. So some of the people, some of the players, and of course, Bristow is in Alberta. So it's not like, but I've gotten more threats from other people. I had to go to file a police report a few years ago because I had a Twitter campaign of Nazis come after me because I was quoted in a paper, speaking against it. So, but just to the point of that you were making, I think it's, if I leave here, I don't want to leave without making the point that deflection is being used to censor any kind of criticism. And so, I'm reading some of the comments, and and whatever people might say about me or somebody else, or they say that person's a Nazi, or you can't believe this person because their credibility is tarnished because of XYZ. We have to look at the fact that this constant deflection and attack on people's credibility and the ad hominems are being used to deflect any kind of scrutiny and accountability. Mm-hmm. And I know it seems so basic, and yet this is what's happening. So I urge everybody, no matter what side of the fence you fall on, follow the question. Don't just get thrown off by people saying, well, how can we be accountable because that person, hosted or wanted to host, a controversial figure. So that person is a Nazi now, or that, or you sued so-and-so, and that, that means your credibility is finished. No, it isn't. It has nothing to do with what I've accomplished in my life, but that's the kind of simplicity and smearing that is happening right now. And follow the question. Don't just listen to the ad hominems and the insult. Just think for yourself, and that's what we need.
Yeah. And fuck Trudeau. No, bad timing.
I'm a political orphan. I can't stand Trudeau, and I'm not going to go into that.
Lachlan, that was we had such a good, powerful, profound statement. Profound.
Yeah,
and then
sorry, I'm sorry. It just felt like the right time to do it.
You brought in the Western Canadian flag.
Alberta just comes in to shit on everything. Holy.
Well, you guys have Bristow, so enjoy them.
Yeah, I want to fucking talk to that guy. I'm gonna track him down and talk to him. I want to tell me what I only have one question. What came first, being a spy or being a raging Nazi?
He was a Nazi. He was working at a strip club as a failed strip club comedian. It's all in that documentary, guys. Follow up on that.
What's the documentary again? I'm going to watch it. What's the name of the documentary?
State, it's half an hour. I can send you guys the link. It's called Grant Bristow, Good for Business. Just Google it on YouTube. It's right on YouTube.
All right. Just Good for Business.
Google Grant Bristow, Good for Business on the Fifth Estate channel.
fascinating.
I really like the tracks we laid for the next time you come on the show. I really do.
You're gonna have me on
like
again?
the tracks. Oh, I would love to have you on, Elisa. I
Thank
think
you.
the world of what you've done. I think the world of anybody who's been through hell and back and chose to make the right decision no matter how hard it was, and then stayed the course even when you had everybody from every side telling you that you were
very
worthless.
admirable.
You know, man. We need heroes like Elisa Hategan, and I'm grateful that you took time to spend to talk to us today to kind of tell us your story. And we're going to have you back to tell other stories. And we're going to, how do you say, unwrap this onion? We're going to unwrap
There's
the
many
hatred
layers,
onion.
many very
Yes.
interesting layers.
Yeah, Karima, is that okay with you if we unwrap the hate onion?
Yeah, onion is a good metaphor because of the tears. But I, as the unwrapping imagery, I was just thinking of a failed strip club comedian. So my thoughts are muddled. Right now.
I was really hung up there too.
My thoughts
Like,
are muddled.
what does that look like? I mean, I can picture the tie.
Well, aren't you
I'm
a failed
pretty sure
comedian
that's
if
a
you're
tweed jacket.
Yeah, but aren't you by nature a failed comedian if you're doing comedy in a strip club? Like,
I can see a hairpiece that doesn't fit very well. Like,
You're
I got
either
a
the best
lot
or
of
the worst. There's no in between.
huge sweat marks on like some kind of baby blue dress shirt and like a belt made out of like twine. Yeah, I get it. I see what I can see Grant Bristow
and an
in my head
aggressive
right now.
set too, because he's being yelled at because Cherry Poppins is on next. Just let me finish my last joke. It's about riding a bike.
Cherry Poppins. Hey, ladies, welcome to the show. We're back. There you go. We took a break to talk about extremism.
Holy
now we're back to talking about strip joints. Don't worry, you missed the start of the show where we opened with our colonoscopies. So happy that you made it for the most important stuff. At Elisa Hategan on Twitter. Elisa, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I know this was a long time coming for us, and I know we've been kind of trying to figure out a time to get you on here. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I also hope that you found it somewhat comforting and a safe space to actually talk about your story. We try to do that for people, and I hope that was your experience today. I really appreciate you.
It was. Thank you so much, guys.
We'll
Thank
talk
you.
to you
It was
soon.
nice meeting you.
Elisa Hategan, ladies and gentlemen. At Elisa Hategan on Twitter.
Jesus
Boy, you
Christ.
know where to you meet the best people, eh, Karima? You really do.
It's a skill.
It really is. And I meant what I said at the
That
start.
was unfucking.
You know what? Actually, we should pause on that. I either introduce the best people to you or the absolute worst.
the worst.
The worst.
Yeah,
There's a
I
bit
don't
of
think
that.
Elisa's going to blow
Follow
up.
me,
Though. I've
follow
done
me.
a lot of
numbers
due
game.
diligence.
It's a
Yeah.
numbers game.
It's a numbers game.
It is.
You know
the
what?
numbers
though?
are weighted in my favor as opposed to your favor when it comes to introducing good people to so and so. Because we work together, right? So it's like, hey, meet this person. They might be able to help you with this. Hey, meet that person. It's like, I think I'm 10 for 10. She's like 2 for 6, maybe 2 for 8. You just turn into psychos, all of them, because of who she hangs out with.
It's
Elisa's
because I
cool.
go in with open heart. You know what? It bites me always, but I can't change.
The thing is, Karima, though, don't stop it, because we need more people like you. We need more people on the planet like Elisa, right? Where she goes into a situation where she's trying to find something redeemable about the unredeemable and trying to figure out why they got on the path that they got to. And she's trying to look underneath the hood to see if there's something she can do to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. There's not enough, and it takes courage. Those people like you and our guest who just, I'm still fucking rattled by the whole thing. That's the essence of courage and strength in character, because you can't win. She's getting beat up by all sides, right? Because she's uncovered something that we all, in deep down in our souls, we all know that the system's rigged, that everything we do, no matter how we do it, it's working against us. And we got to cling to the good ones, right? The ones that are actually out there, that are actually doing it for the right reasons. And unfortunately, it seems to me, getting harder and harder to find those people, right? I have moments where I'm like, Like I walk away from some of these podcasts where we have guests like this, and I'm going, "Is there a fucking point? Like, why
like,
bother?
trying
I'm
to live
just
a
gonna
life?
stay in my fucking house.
Yeah,
like
I
I'm never gonna leave. Like I'm never gonna trust anybody ever again. But then I don't know. There's got to be more to it. There's got to be more to life. It was funny. She mentioned something, and I think because I've seen this over the years, and I've commented on it a couple of times. These people, this Grant that she was referring to, ended up getting put into that position because he showed signs of and traits of the type of person they needed to put in that role.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that, and she said, we see this in other organizations. Yes, we do. We see it all the time. I don't care where you work right now. Somebody was put in a position of authority because they were a cock, and they knew that they could put them in there to deal with shit that they didn't want to deal with. And we still live in that world. These people still get power based on their ability to be dicks.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't get, and that's unfortunate because that just proves the point that nice guys finish last. Like that, I've never wanted to believe that. But ultimately being a good person at the end of the day sometimes works against you. Quite often it does.
You guys readers? Do you read?
I'm a big reader.
No,
as long as it's an
audio book. Yeah, I know.
That counts.
I would highly encourage you to read a book by one of my favorite authors. I have a few. Named Robert Greene. No, Lachlan. Not a is you practicing Stoic? You might be into Stoicism.
Yeah, is he a half shit in a cup, and is it half full?
No,
cup
not at all.
Robert, what?
He's written books. One of my favorite books that's ever been written is called The 48 Laws of Power. Now, the 48 Laws of Power is basically the dark arts of how to be successful. But it's not dark arts. Oh, yeah. It's incredible. I mean, it amplifies some types of deceit. It amplifies the truth. It amplifies hiding certain intentions from people. I mean, it's all about how you get a leg up. Now, Robert Greene's he's a philosopher, he's a tremendous writer, but he taps into some like pretty secretive, pretty cool psyop stuff that you can do on a daily basis in your life to become more successful, where it's like a cognitive thing. You think about, okay, if I don't tell this person what my intentions are, I use it in meetings all the time. Where I go into an M&A meeting and I'm sitting there, like we had one this week. Some people were maybe coming on board and we're sitting there talking. I didn't say a word for like the first 20 minutes because I'm like, dark arts, Robert Greene, people with the most to say have the least to say. And I wanted them to come.
I have an inability to do that.
It totally works. I know you do. It totally works. It totally works. And so there's, it's easy to say only bad things happen to good people, and it doesn't pay to be a good person. It always pays to be a good person. It always pays to be a good individual, tell the truth, do what's right for better people, to be of good character and acts for the common good. But when you're up against this kind of shit, that's what the dark arts are for. And two people can play, two groups can play, an entire country can play. But I'm telling you, everybody should read that book today. And once you get through it, go like this. Oh, that's how those guys got everything, and why I got nothing, or why there are so many people out here that are under the disparity of wealth and poor people. That it's because there are people out there that read, and unfortunately, a lot of those people read stuff like this, where they're like, "Now I'm going to fuck over the world," and they do. Case in point, Elon Musk, one of his favorite books. Not only his favorite book, but the Teal guys and the PayPal guys, they all read about this kind of stuff, but they go all the way in with the dark arts and they forget about the good parts, right? Whereas this government, they try to make it look like, Kareem, and you don't know this. Every government tries to make it look like they're your friend. They're here to help you. But you wouldn't believe if you pull back that curtain in Oz, you'd be shocked. This is about how to get you. It's not about how to help you. It's how to get you. And it's always been the case, has it not? Hasn't that always been the case?
To varying degrees, I think so. But I don't know that we need to be that pessimistic about it.
Yes, we do.
Suck on that.
Well,
but I'm not pessimistic. Like, I'm a pretty happy guy. Like, I don't care if Pierre Poilievre magically ascends to the throne of Canada's ministerial seat tomorrow. My life isn't going to change. But I am still going to be very cautiously aware of the government. I'm very cautiously aware of people who have immense power and try to tell us that what we're going to get is going to taste really good. Don't worry about it. Never tastes good. Tastes like shit all the fucking time.
Can I just add to it?
Yeah.
I think you're right. And again, I tend to joke about these things because I need to, because I need to be able to go to bed at night. But I think the older I get, the more focused I am on how to not only be comfortable with who I am, but also not be that cynical. Like, I have been a very cynical dick my whole life. So that's my default position, is cynicism, to question everything.
You're ready for this.
Well, but the thing is, I'm at a point now where I'm actually trying, and I swear to God, I am trying to find the good in people. I'm trying to figure out how to manipulate situations that I get myself into from the perspective of, you can be truthful, you can be a decent person, and you can pull that out of a situation. And that I think isn't done enough individually. And I also think the other side of it is that we tend to, because we all put our flagpoles up in different camps, and I do it. Every once in a while I catch myself doing it. Put the flagpole in, and then I'm firmly on this side of things, right?
Depends what dinner party you're at, right? Like, it's like, hey, is most of the people here vaccinated? I'll be vaccinated. You go to a dinner party, hey, you're all right. Hey, guess what? I'm all right today too. Yeah, fuck that.
No. Can I use a different example? One that's more fitting for, especially for Alberta. Like, listen, I think we need to be very concerned about who takes over the province, right? But I think we need to be concerned if the NDP wins, and I think we need to be concerned if the UCP wins. And for those people, like, the frustrating thing for me is, I think Danielle Smith is actually going to win this next election because of how the fire she's stoking. The frustrating thing about it is, you can't have a conversation with the people that think that she is right? Like,
it's not rational based. Yeah, it's not evidence based. It's all emotion.
No, it's all emotion. And the thing is, like, so you get frustrated when you want to wave the, hey, she might not be in it for your best intentions, Terry. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you should dig into this one and think about this before you just blindly support some woman who's trying to pass the sovereignty of Alberta of a national
Canada Act.
Which, by the way, every time I hear that out loud, it brings me joy that that's the title of the bill.
Yeah.
United Canada.
I'll tell you what, like, the combination of extremism in Alberta is such a great example. In Canada, like in Ontario, we have it too. We're run by a conservative extremist panel of losers, but they make it look like they care, right? Like they give us this, like, oh, they don't care. No, they don't care. But in Alberta, I give her full marks, Karima. Like, that is crazy on display 24/7, and she's like, "What? I don't understand what the problem is."
On her sleeves, like right there, just for the whole world to see.
It's awesome.
Pick me as I am, or not at all.
Yeah. I mean, we joked that the one that was going to win the UCP party, when they announced that Jason Kenney was getting ousted for not being crazy enough, we basically we were counting the number of times somebody said freedom, and we're like, that one's going to win. And Danielle Smith said freedom the most, and she won. Oh, yeah. And now she's carrying that. She's riding that horse into spring 2023.
You see,
and she's getting people on board.
She's on the wagon. She's in a drugstore today, and they're because like, I don't know if you guys know anything about hospitals in conservative-run provinces, specifically Ontario, which asks the Red Cross to come in to help with pediatric, facilitating pediatric kids in the hospital, very sick, dying children. So it was like, Like, we literally grabbed the people we send over to deal with refugee crises after floods in Indonesia happen. Like, that's what we're using in Ottawa because Doug
A
Ford
volcano. We're sending the Red Cross.
We're sending the volcano team to
the kids are running away from lava. We send the Red Cross. No, they're in Ontario in a fucking hospital right now.
Same thing with Alberta. They got ATCO trailers and they canceled the, I believe, the Flames palliative care. They're literally pulling the plug on the sickest kids in Alberta to care for kids that have a better chance of living. Because, again, this is the culmination of it. This is the culmination of people not telling the truth. It's a culmination of people deciding to be selfish. This is the culmination of pure, unadulterated, conspiratorial bullshit. And fuck, who pays the price today? Children across Canada. So stuck on that.
And then the other thing is, you can't, like, it's very layered, right? Like, I think that there needs to be something done about the structure of the healthcare system in this country, and I think that we need to lift the lid on that. But I don't trust the conservatives to do it. I don't trust the liberals to do it. Like, something's wrong. Our healthcare system is broken, and for some reason, every time you have that conversation, you have to take up a political mantle. I mean, and it's getting in the way of fixing the situation. All we're doing is clouding the whole thing with the fact that, you know, we're siding with the left or the right, depending on your viewpoint, right? It's fucking the healthcare system. Do we take pride in that as Canadians? Absolutely. Then let's get the fucking politics out of it. We've just buried the whole thing in politics, and now I don't know if we're ever going to get to the bottom of what the issue is. This system was broken before COVID. It was.
What, the healthcare or the political system? Both.
The healthcare system was fucking broken before COVID hit.
Yeah.
And it was on a lifeline before COVID. And now we're sunk. And I don't know what the answer is, but the people that are in charge of it are not making the right decisions.
No,
on both sides, because this is across the country.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It's not just Alberta and Ontario; it's across the fucking country. We're having problems with the healthcare system.
What a wonderful show!
That was remarkable.
My favorite part is how we always end on a positive note.
All right, I'm going to end on a positive note. I will. I promised I would, because this was the greatest video I've ever seen. And I want to end with this. Now, this upset a friend of mine. And
is
I
this
get
that guy being run over by the ambulance?
Yeah.
Okay,
what?
all right. I don't know if I should be watching this, because
I'm going to put it in there and see if you like it. I don't know if you
Karima, we're ending on a positive.
We're ending on a positive note.
Talking healthcare. Now we're going to show a video of a guy being run over by an ambulance.
Which Locke tweeted yesterday. He goes, I can't believe I'm laughing at this. I don't know if this is funny or not.
No, I don't know.
Have you seen this video, Chris?
No, I don't know at all what to expect, except for what's come out of your mouth.
You know me. You know I'm never going to hijack you in the middle of these shows, right? You know I'm not going to put you in harm's way. This happened in a park in London, England, a couple days ago. There's a gentleman walking through the park. Paramedics were apparently called to come to the park to deal with a separate issue. Now, I want you to watch very carefully, okay? And a friend of mine phoned me today, and she's like, oh, my God, if you're going to fucking play that, make sure you give people a graphic warning. It's not really that graphic. Guy gets up and kind of walks away from it, I guess. But if you're a paramedic,
he had a limp.
Is this a sign you shouldn't be a paramedic, maybe? All three of these people. And by the way, thank God they're all wearing masks. Let's watch this together. There you go. Guy stops old guy in a park. Here comes the ambulance. Guy's like, boom, there you go. He goes down. They pull right over him. They back right up because they're trying to get to the entrance of the door. So the ambulance creates their own patient. They all get out with masks on, as you can see. And they're like,
why is he not concerned about the person?
Well, they don't know yet that they've run him over by backing up over the guy. And then, oh my God, the woman now noticed.
Just casually.
She's going to get the driver.
And then she's like, oh my God, Tony, look what we did. And Tony's like, holy fuck. And then he calls Terry. Terry comes out and he's like, Holy fuck, we did run over a guy.
I like it. They're trying to pull him out. No, the wheel is still on my leg.
I feel so bad for that. Anyway, the gentleman in question is an elderly man. He is fine. He was treated at a hospital and released. But look at them. They're pulling him out. And then what they do, they pull the car ahead like 4 feet where they're like, is it off the guy? Yeah, it's off the guy. But that is, it's got tens of thousands of views. I put it up late yesterday. And the reaction that this caused among people was crazy. They were like, take that down. And I'm like, I don't think so. It's viral now. It's staying up.
Tethered to one's values. Yes.
I watched that. I don't know why. I felt bad immediately for laughing as hard as I did. I did
too.
Yeah.
Anyway, great to see you, Karima. Thanks for doing this. See you next week.
Guys.
Okay, buddy.
We'll have you back on our next painting episode.
Yeah. Make sure you get your Bob
That
Ross.
should be a holiday special. Can we do a holiday special painting episode?
A little painting where we never raise our voices. We just talk like Bob Ross the whole time. I would love that.
That's Skip the Dishes ad where they got the Bob Ross guy.
I'm surprised they haven't been sued.
Very funny.
Yeah. Have you seen the Bob Ross documentary, by the way?
No.
Have you guys watched it on Netflix?
Be able to watch that.
Oh, it's the best show you'll ever watch. It's the best documentary I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. Bob Ross, he was down to fuck. This guy loved to bang. He was like, dude, this guy was incredible. Like, Bob Ross
took a turn.
Yeah, he was like a Navy SEAL or he's in the military or something. Comes back. He and his wife split up. He lives with his son, and he starts getting it on with some of his painting clients. One of them's like, "Hey, my husband and I'll support." Oh yeah, my husband and I'll support your company, and we'll help you grow your company. Just sign this weird piece of paper. He's like, "Yeah, no problem." So they grow it to this big thing. Bob Ross is on, and anyway, Bob gets up. Bob loves to get in there with the ladies too, and it's just a tremendous story where Bob was like, "I don't want to fight, so I'll just give them the cup." So Bob's on his deathbed, signs his rights, his name, his face, everything over to this lady and her husband. Everything. Screws Bob Ross's kid out of everything. And these people sue everybody. So I'm shocked that Skip the Dishes is allowed to use his, like a likeness of a Bob Ross kind of guy. But I highly recommend you watch the Bob Ross documentary. It's fucking awesome. If you love Bob Ross.
You said that was on. I got a lot of stuff to do here. I got to read a book.
Yeah.
Watch a YouTube video about
You'll watch that.
Failed stripping comedian. Strip house comedian.
Thanks, Karima. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Take care,
Karima Saad, ladies and gentlemen, lawyer, activist, gonzo journalist at Karima Rules on Twitter, and sadvocacy.com is the name of her website.
She's awesome. That was very interesting.
Wasn't it great? You know what I liked about it is like I was just asking questions. I just wanted to know answers about certain things because it all ties into the shit today, right? So arm yourself with great information. Talk to people who've been there before. That's what we just did today. Thanks for doing this, dude.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
That's a lot to digest, that one.
Well, feel comfortable picking up the phone and sending emails tonight.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I know I will.
Okay, brother.
Talk to you soon. Lock and Cross 957 cruisefm.ca, I believe is the name of the website. Yeah. Morning show host, 957 Cruise FM, Edmonton, Alberta. Maybe the best rock station in the country. For sure, the best rock morning show in the country. And if you don't have one of those in your town, I highly recommend you go online, 957cruisefm.ca. Have a listen every weekday morning. Him, Grant, Jimmy, wonderful job. Very funny. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to Elisa for being here. Thanks to Karima for being here, too. That was a lot of fun, wasn't it? You get in, you get out, you ask a few questions, shake a few trees, make a few people nervous. I like that. Appreciate you being here. And thanks to our friends and sponsors at Cantork, cantork.com. Listen, these guys do something not many people do. They're Canada's assembly tool experts. What does that mean? They make torque wrenches, the best in the business, beautiful ones, hardworking, rugged, Canada's leading industrial tool experts, offering you the very best in sales, service, rentals, calibration, maintenance, and custom fabrication of industrial torque tools, no matter the scale of your bolting project. These guys have your solution. You go to cantork.com to get it. Colin Livingston and his group of Edmontonians, lovely Canadian people, brought all their manufacturing back to Canada from overseas over the past couple of years. because this is a Canadian company that services Canada and the world. So all you need to do, if you're looking for a fastener, loosener, a solution in that industrial torque tool expert assembly region, just go to cantorque.com. That's all you got to do. Peruse. They do everything. They're incredible and they're Canadian. Thanks to Ed's Fine Imports as well. We wear as Gitch, you can too. GITCH. That's your promo code, GITCH3. Order 3 pairs. You get a 4th pair for free. Lots of colors. Breathable boxer briefs, pouch in the front. I swear to God, the last pair of underwear you will ever buy in your entire life. They come from Gitch at edsfineimports.com. Canadian-made underwear for Canadian dudes. Go there today and order online. Get your free pair with that promo code too. Tell them I said hi. Sign up for a newsletter too. You get an extra 15% off your purchase. edsfineimports.com. Clothing for men and boys. And of course, our friends over at kivlaw.ca. Listen, you in a legal jackpot, you in a bit of a bind, you got something going on, you need a great defense lawyer like Southern Ontario's best team of defense attorneys. Kivlaw.ca. Today, don't walk, run. That's what I meant. Don't walk, run. Email Robert yourself, the principal at kivlaw.ca, and let him know what your issue is and let him call you back and let him help you. These guys hold your hand through a process, keep you as free as possible, help you understand what you're going through and not only understand it, but help you learn from it and get better for it. Listen, you don't want to do any time. You don't want to do anything that you're not supposed to be doing. You don't want to get treated poorly by the legal system. It happens. You need someone that holds your hand through it. These are the best people in Southern Ontario. Kivlaw.ca. Email Robert today. Robert at kivlaw.ca. Sign up for a newsletter at deanblundell.com as well. That'd be great. Make sure you subscribe to all of the things we do. Twitter, at it's Dean Blundell, deanblundell.net. Also, you can get us on Instagram. You can get us on Facebook. You can get us on YouTube, Dean Blundell Show. You can watch the whole thing live. Could have seen Elisa waxing about neo-Nazism in the 90s. You missed it. You can also get us with audio. Dean Blundell Show on YouTube, Dean Blundell TV on Twitter. All the audio, Google, Spotify, etc. Please rate and subscribe. Have a great day. Great night. See you tomorrow.